Good evening, everybody. My name is Sam Harrell. I'm the information officer with the Alaska Complex Incident Management Team. We're here to help out the county and the forest, counties and the forest for the Aspen Acres fire that's down here in the hills. We got a lineup of speakers here that's going to give you some good information tonight. We're also broadcasting this live onto our social media channels and onto YouTube. You don't need to log in to get onto the YouTube part of this. We're going live now. We'll be able to collect comments and questions. I have information officers who will be responding to those online. That'll be recorded and they'll remain on those sites. And we can continue to collect comments and questions there, and people who will be monitoring that and be able to respond to those questions. I got to turn off my alarms here because I all seem to go off right when I don't want them to. All right. I believe we're all here. I believe I've got all of my speakers. We can get started right off with our incident meteorologist. Sophie, you're up.
Thank you. All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Sophia Adams. I am the incident meteorologist here. The first map that I wanted to show you is obviously a precipitation map here. The light blue colors show about 100th to 500th of inches of precipitation, and this has fallen over the past 48 hours. So we've had some pushes of moisture that have come in from the west that have provided moisture across primarily the northern portions of the fire, where one of our remote automated weather stations measured 0.34 inches of rain. And then down towards the southern portions of the fire, we had a pretty strong thunderstorm that came in yesterday, and that dropped over an inch of rain down in those southern portions of the fire. We can go on to the next slide. All right, so before I get more into what we can expect for the weather for the future, I did want to just take a little minute and go back and see what we have experienced this year, because it has been a very historic year. So this map here is showing the average highs and low temperatures throughout the beginning of the 2026 year, and these are measured out of a cooperative station that we have in Rye. And you can see here, all of these pink triangles indicate that we've had a record daily high temperature. So all of those indicate that we've had a really warm start to this year, extremely above normal. We can go to the next slide. And then another thing to note is that we've also had a very dry year, right? We've had our accumulated precipitation up on the top. So that black line is typically what we would want to see for normal precipitation, just the liquid equivalent there. That is much lower than normal. We've only received about 9 inches of precipitation, when typically we would like to see at least 12 at this time of year. Another important note is obviously that historic snow drought that we've had. You can see the accumulated snowfall in Rye was typically, we can expect anywhere from 80 to 90 inches of snow throughout the beginning of the year, and we really only hit just under 50 inches of snow. So really extremely below normal snowpack, historic snow drought across much of the West. We can go to the next slide. And all of that led, of course, to us being in a severe to extreme and even exceptional drought across most portions of Colorado. Here in the Pueblo area, we are in a severe drought, but we're very quickly creeping up into that extreme category. You can go to the next slide. So some of you maybe remember the Oak Ridge fire a few years ago. I did just want to highlight that the last week's weather conditions that we had were considered extreme fire weather. What we had during the Oak Ridge fire, and this was the forecast that was made by the incident meteorologist on site. You can see that our winds were in that green category, so that means low threat, right? And we had relative humidities generally in the 15 to 25%, even 30% range for those daytime lows. And overnight, we had fairly good recoveries throughout the time of that Oak Ridge fire. So much different weather conditions than what we've seen the last week. All right, we can go to the next slide. So this is from our Beulah remote automated weather station, one of the main stations that we've been using to make our forecasts for the incident. And you can see these are just all of these different observations from the different days that the fire made those extreme runs. And you can see how strong some of those wind gusts were. I'd like to highlight June 29th. You can see at 4:11 p.m. we measured a gust up to 44. And then that third row of numbers to the right, that's going to be our relative humidity values. That was down to 4%, which is extremely dry. That paired with those really gusty winds just leads to extreme and very critical fire weather conditions. Overnight as well, I'd like to highlight into July, the bottom right corner, July 2nd into July 3rd, you can see that we had relative humidity values, that third line of numbers from the right, anywhere from 4 to 6% overnight. Just extreme conditions paired with those really gusty southwesterly winds led that fire to make that really intense run that night. And this is just extremely anomalous, really not what we expect overnight. It's very rare. All right, move on to the next slide. Okay, so now we're going to move into what we can expect for the next 7 days. So you may have heard that we have a flash flood. We've had a flash flood watch over the Aspen Acres fire for the last couple of days. We do have another flash flood watch in effect for tomorrow from 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. So we are expecting another push of some showers and thunderstorms from that moisture from the west. It is a little bit lower of a chance than what we've seen the last several days. So we have about a 30% chance of precipitation tomorrow, expecting those thunderstorms to begin in the afternoon. But tonight we do have fairly good relative humidity recoveries that we're expecting, anywhere from 60 to 70%, maybe a little bit lower up on those higher elevations. And then as we move into the weekend and into the beginning of the next week, we are expecting a return back to those hot, dry, windy conditions. It doesn't look like it will be nearly as extreme as what we saw last week, but it still does look very hot, very dry, and we are approaching getting back to that red flag warning criteria Sunday into Monday. As we get into the middle of next week, we are expecting an increasing chance of those afternoon thunderstorms. We're expecting another surge of moisture to move in from the west, and that will increase our chance of precipitation and thunderstorms, but we'll also be quite hot. Our temperatures are going to be in the low to mid 90s at those lower elevations around 6,000 feet around that Beulah Ross station, really through the end or the middle of next week. And that's going to be, again, paired with some pretty strong winds as well. All right, next slide, please. I think that is actually it for my portion. So I'll be around after. If you have any questions about the weather, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
So good evening, everybody. Air Trimble Fire Behavior. I want to expand upon what Sophie talked about with obviously the drought you guys know all about, the hot, dry, windy conditions as leading up to current fire behavior, kind of like touch the past. I will touch upon a little bit on the Oak Ridge fire for comparison, and I'll show you guys a tool that we use to kind of forecast where the fire behavior is going to be in the past, present, and the future. But for right now, let's go ahead and give you an overview of the fire that we're on. Go ahead, next one. This is the start of the fire satellite imagery. Okay, you saw Sophie's basically rain gauge showing that we had pretty good moisture coming down here in the part of the fire, in the north half of the fire, but not a lot in the middle. A couple days ago, this map was pretty red with heat. That fire did kind of substantially knock it down, definitely not out, and I want to discuss that with you a little bit, but it knocked it down with this morning's intense heat is showing up essentially mid-slope here, down in this southeast corner. Obviously a lot of heat on top of Charlie Peak, and we got a little bit more here in the pocket. This was the old Oak Ridge fire scar, and the fire just skirted around that, but it's still burning actively, kind of mid-slope right now in mixed conifer. Next slide. But the fire definitely did not, although it looked like it, on the lower elevations, it looked like it basically parked fire behavior. It kind of did, but it kind of didn't. This is a view of this morning's basically isolated heat. So all of these dots here, essentially, mid-elevation, low elevation, this is the area that when you heard Sophie talk about, we got one more day of basically afternoon precipitation, and then we're going in this hotter, drier event. In the heavier fuels, and I'll show you kind of pictures of what I'm talking about in the medium to heavier fuels out there. But for most part, we're looking at all of these residual heats that are left over from our rain event, still perking up into the soil there. They're kind of hiding, they're just smoking, and the hotter we get, the more these are going to perk up and essentially reburn some of these areas that we thought were kind of cleaning out. But, so yeah, there's a lot of heat left in this fire, and you're going to see a lot more activity in the coming days and weeks. Next. So this is an energy release component graph. We use this to basically as a forecast model for hazardous. It's basically a indirect measure of fuel moisture is one way of looking at it. And I've graphed this saying essentially on the red is maximum values at this specific. Willis Creek is a raw station we use around 9,000 feet in the middle of the fire right now. It's a very useful station to basically relate past 20 years ago to present. And what it's showing is that this is the June 29th. This is when the fire started. This is on the blue line here, pointed here. Before I get too far into this, note the 97th percentile is usually very active fire behavior when it hits above 95, extremely active. The 60th percentile is essentially where we want to be. Not going to say the fire is going to go out when it goes to 60th percentile, but it's going to be greatly reduced. Basically, it's indicative of very wet fuels. And you can see back here in May and June, we had some fairly wet fuel conditions back there, but it quickly, June 1st it came up to the 97th, came down. We had the start, and it jumped up, and it basically in this part of the range in here, the 95th percentile is where that fire made some impressive runs. You know, you guys remember it made 3 to 8 mile runs a day coming out from that strong west wind out of Aspen Acres subdivision and came right on down north of Rye and Beulah and that part of the world. And so when we got higher humidities and a little bit spritz of moisture here the last few days, afternoon moisture events, essentially this graph is showing that basically the fuel moisture is essentially departed, and this is where we're sitting at today, is basically at the low end here. It's still above, it's basically in the 80th percentile, but with the forecast for hot weather, this is a forecast from July 9th to July 14th, and the forecast weather elements are basically predicting that the the ERC component is going to basically go and hit maximum levels. So this line here is average for this area. We would obviously like to see this thing go average or below average, below the 60th, but it's not happening right now. And in long-range forecasts, I'm not seeing it happen in the near range. Next slide. You saw Sophie compared the Oak Creek fire with our fire. There's similar metrics. Oak Creek fire, as you guys know, happened 2 years ago. It started on June 22nd. The ERCs were below the 60th, and they were rising. They were warming and dry, rising above. It started, and it did most of the burning up between the first couple weeks in June until we got a rain event. And for the next several days and a couple weeks, we got subsequent quarter-inch rain, third-inch rain here and there. It added up to half an inch of rain to this point here. It dried out again, and then basically, then we got some serious rain on the fire. And I marked here July 21st, we got an inch of rain on that fire. So it knocked it out pretty well, and I believe they got a handle on it and basically contained it right in this time period in here. And you can see it kind of went up, and then the next rain event kind of basically took care of it. So that's a comparison. I graphed it in relation to where we're at 2 years later today. So 2024, the dark line there with the dates, and then 2026, what we're looking at today here on Aspen, on the current fire. And so you can see the difference in that. We've got a little bit higher ERCs with our current Aspen Acre fire. Next. Okay, so that rain event did punch out on the lighter fuels. Down on the flats, this is near Rye, down on the flats, essentially with the short grasses, short to medium high grasses, the rain did basically freeze and park the fire. There's probably very little residual fire in this kind of fuel type, and of course that's on the lower elevations. The rain did a lot of good for this kind of fuel type. Next. Okay, we get into the Ponderosa Pine Gamble Oak, kind of a mid-elevation or north aspect. A lot of that here, a lot of houses in the urban interface in that type. The Gamble Oak, essentially this burn, what I call a mixed severity burn that burned part of this here. There is, depending on where that rainstorm hit, if it hit very hard for a long period of time, it did also park the fire in this fuel type, but there's still enough overhead canopy fuels in here and enough surface fuels that this is still going to come out. There's parts of this that are unburned from the burn itself. There's some unburned stuff, and there's some heat still hiding in the canopy on here, so I expect this to be, in the mid-elevations, to be popping up here and there in the unburned areas. Next. Okay, and this shows you, this was the old Junkins burn. You can see this was before we got the rain. You can see it wasn't burning that fast. It was just kind of skunking around. They call it a surface fire through the residual pine, and it's burning here, the Gamble Oak and grasses here. Very slow rates of spread, but it was still carrying itself through there. Next. Okay, going up in elevation are basically our aspen and a mixed conifer. Fire did basically burn most of the conifers. They're a little bit more volatile, and it hit the higher moisture of the aspen. The fire came out of the aspen. It did kill some aspen, obviously, in the crown. Fire came out and essentially went to the ground and the grasses and shrubs down here and this creeping down here. This stand also will, this is kind of a mid to upper elevation, north aspects. This stand here also will retain some heat in the next few days and things that are unburned. Okay, moving on to, I think, St. Charles Peak. This was the fire behavior after 1 or 2 rain events, and the fire was just, in the morning, it's creeping and smoldering. This kind of environment, the upper elevations, this is the mixed conifer spruce fir, and there's a fair amount of dead Engelmann spruce up here from the bark beetle. This is the kind of fuel type that's going to retain the heat. We can get an inch of rain on this fuel type, and it's just, if it's a quick rainstorm event, it would just bounce off the larger fuels up there, and it will be retained. There's a lot of down dead material in there. There's a lot of 12, 14-inch saw log, very dry fuels. It's only 10%. It's basically kiln dry lumber. And this is what's going to retain this fire for a long time. Next. So this was right after one of the thunderstorm events. Fire was basically parked in some of this lighter fuels in here. Again, the Gamble Oak, Ponderosa, and this is an old burn scar. This was, I think, still the Junkins fire from 2016. Fire, you can see, this is the upper elevations behind the Junkins fire. The upper elevations, this is mixed conifer aspen, and the fire is still very active there because the crown canopy basically shielded the surface fuels, and you're going to see more of this kind of activity as things start drying out there. Next. And this was, like, I think my second day on the fire, and it was right out of Rye. Basically, you've got kind of a more of a crown, let's say an active crown fire development. Basically, I think it pyroed out up there. When you see this kind of fire behavior, this is throwing embers up to a mile away in these conditions. And we're going to see, I'm afraid we're going to see a little bit more of this as we start getting into this warming and drying period. Operations is right behind me. He's going to be discussing essentially tactics, strategy and tactics, how to basically deal with some of the fires that we see in here. But I want to paint a picture of what to expect, and we have a lot more alpine fir, spruce fuels on the higher elevations that this thing's going to impact. And so I want to let you guys know to more or less expect this kind of fire behavior in the next couple days. So with that, thank you.
Brad Wash, I'm one of the operations section chiefs. Good evening. When we got the call that we're coming to Colorado, I'll tell you I wasn't excited. And I don't say that because I don't like Colorado. I consider Colorado maybe like my third home. I started my fire career at Mesa Verde on their Helitack crew, and then I moved to Fort Collins, went to grad school at Colorado State, and worked for the Forest Service there. So I really like Colorado, but the last couple times I've had to come to Colorado, it has not been a great experience. I feel like I had a great career in fire, but I came here, the 5 Mile Canyon fire, the Waldo Canyon fire, then the Black Forest fire, and then also did some work after the Marshall fire came through. So all of them had very detrimental impacts as far as homes lost and that sort of thing. And You know, one thing we need to realize that much of Colorado, we live in what are called fire-dependent ecosystems. These ecosystems have evolved because of wildland fire, and we've largely removed that fire, and that's in part why we're seeing some of the forest health conditions within the fire area, and we're having that's been a challenge for us. So a concern and how we're looking at fire. When we got here, they ordered the Alaska team because there were 3 other teams that were already on large fires within the Colorado area from the Rocky Mountain region. So they exhausted all their teams and had to start ordering resources from outside the region. So first of all, that I knew that we were coming into a situation where we had a wild and urban interface where people have built their homes in the wildlands and adjacent to that. I also knew that we were going to have a hard time getting resources because there was already 3 teams out before us, and that meant resources were going to have to come in from other places. And we basically have resources from Maine to Florida to California. We got a lot of California resources to Alaska. And with that, though, it took us a while to get built up as far as resources. And when we came here, the fire was really, we were in a total defensive mode. We didn't have the resources. The fire was pushing us around, and we were really struggling with that. And it was definitely a challenge just because we didn't have the resources we needed, and the fire was making large gains. You saw Sophie's weather as far as low relative humidities, high winds, and that really kept us from being able to get on the offensive. I feel like we kind of made that shift maybe 2 or 3 years, 2 or 3 days ago, that we started getting more in an offensive mode, and instead of having to chase the fire, we were able to get out in front of it. We were able to get resources in places. We were starting to get resources. So we're in a lot better place than we were when we first came here. And I feel like, you know, the weather's also helped. We don't have those hot and dry conditions now, and we have received precipitation on the fire. The one thing, that precipitation that we've received, you know, you guys came out of a very dry winter. I mean, there was really no winter and no snowpack. So those fuels are extremely dry, and you saw the drought conditions that are existing. And 1 or 2 little rain events, and especially these thunderstorms, even though we may have gotten close to an inch of rain down by the Rye area, if it falls really fast, it doesn't have time to penetrate in those fuels, so they can dry out really fast. And you saw Sophie's forecast. We're looking this weekend to go back into kind of that hot, dry, and windy conditions, so that is a concern. But I do feel we're in a lot better position going into that. And let's talk a little bit about how things look going into that. So we're starting to see, you know, the fire is, what are we calling it today? 96,000 acres. I think we're calling it close to 20% contained. So we're feeling better as far as that's where you see the black on the map. That means that there's containment, and we feel good that the fire is not going to expand beyond that. We still do know that we do have homes behind that we need to be concerned about, and so we'll be working on that. You did see fire behavior in Eric's infrared map that showed all those little dots out here as far as heat sources. And you know, just yesterday I was talking to one of the divisions, and they went around 8 homes and they found 16 heats. So we're going to continue to be what we call mopping up in these areas, but we are feeling pretty good about this eastern side. So I'm not going to get too much into that. Where I want to talk about is what we have to look long-term wise, because this fire is not out, and it's going to be on the landscape for a while. If we look up at the north end of the fire in Wetmore and the Greenwood, we were struggling in that. That was our last area that we were struggling. We had some of those thunder cells form to the south of it, and it was pushing out the fire to the north. We had a couple times we were a little concerned whether or not the dozer line that we had in place was going to hold, and if we were going to have to back off to 96. We feel like we've got dozer line mostly around there. There's a couple little places mid-slope that we don't have it, but for the most part, we've got that surrounded by dozer line and feeling pretty comfortable about that. And I'm guessing a lot of you are from this area since we're just north of here. As we come down, North Creek, Mangus, and where the Bishop Castle is. That's one area where we've been seeing some smoke come out the last 2 days. That area also did not get much, if any, like maybe 1/100 of an inch of precipitation. So that's not going to do much for that That being said, we do have, this map doesn't show it, but we do have, and I think we just finished it up today, we do have dozer line completely around that. It's not blackened in because we are allowing the fire to back into that dozer line, but we do feel like that area is in pretty good shape. When we came here, the Forest Service said, we collectively, with the state and with the sheriff's departments, identified various values at risk. And those values were the various communities and all the wildland-urban interface around those. So all of our attention was placed in the front. They basically said, I wouldn't say they told us, let it burn in the forest, but that's our low priority. So we did not have the resources to go on the forest. If you look at the, I don't know what it is today, it's probably grown in 100 acres or so, but if you look on the west side of the 165 road, it looks like these are just little slops. Well, when this is 96,000 acres, those little slops are 4,600 acres worth of fire. It's not something that we can just throw a crew at and they can get at, put line around in a day or two. The other concern for these areas, that's in very rugged, steep terrain, and we don't want to put firefighters in there where they're going to get injured. We've been working a dozer line along the Millset Trail just above Camp Jackson, and the other day we had two what we call IWIs, incidents within an incident, where a firefighter was injured. One blew out his knee, and then another one had a dehydration case. So we don't want to put firefighters in where we're going to get them injured. So that tells us we're going to kind of look back, and we've been working with the state and the Forest Service looking at what are some of our options, considering that we don't feel it's safe to put firefighters in there, but we also want to look at how can we contain this fire onto the forest. So we have come up with a number of different strategies. One is continuing to put dozer line up this Millset trail system. We've got dozer line about halfway. Today we started putting dozer line down from the top, but the other area of heat that you were seeing today was these fingers coming out of the Jackson Camp area. Jackson Camp is safe, but it's making its way up the hillside. So we did have to pull those dozers out when that got a little more active. We have been hitting it hard with helicopters. I think we have a complement of 8 Type 1 helicopters, so like the Black Hawk or Chinook-size helicopter. And when I was leaving ICP for this meeting, we had 4 helicopters, 4 of the heavy helicopters working. And they've got a pretty good water source. Isabel Lake is where they've been dipping out of. They were also starting to set up, we have what's called a mobile retardant base, and we have one right by the high school in Rye and one on the 78 road. Those are retardant bases that the helicopters will go, and we can use retardant. The one thing, though, is that retardant in water, it's only so effective, and especially under these dry conditions. I was listening to Air Attack, and they basically said if we're not able to get boots on the ground, it's effective for about 6 hours, but then fire will go through that retardant line. So trying to just kind of cool things down, keep this in check, give us a little bit of time. We are looking at, so with that ties into the 369 road that then comes around, and the 360 road. So that road system, we are looking at a possible alternative to try to catch that fire. There's a couple issues there. Again, we've talked about the bug kill and some of the forest health issues. There is a lot of standing and dead and down material, and that really is difficult as far as it's a great receptor fuel. So if we're trying to burn off around that and an ember lands in that, it's a good opportunity for the fire to spot in that location. See what else I want to. So we've got that. We do have, it does open up into some meadows here, so we're hoping that maybe we can tie into that. If that's not successful, and we do have concern as far as if we have, our divisions that are out there estimated it would take us about 10 days to get this line in because it's steep. We've got to straighten out some of the switchbacks in there because those switchbacks are an area where it's difficult to hold the fire. 10 days there, another 7 days to come across the top, tie in with this meadows, about 7 days to get this line fully prepped where we could actually burn off of it. And the fire may beat us to that. So if that's the case and we're not able to hold that, we're also looking at another alternative. And that brings us basically down to the flats where we don't have to deal with topography as much. The fire's going to back down towards us. Lighter fuels, we're out of the timber. So we have kind of devised an alternative that goes around the backside of this farther out, again, in the flats, lighter fuels, where we can approach it. We are starting to put dozer line behind rye. This is our biggest concern right now as far as values at risk. We have started putting dozer line and working with homeowners as far as trying to fire harden their homes. The other area that we're not going to put firefighters in is the Greenhorn Wilderness. We've had discussions with the Forest Service about that. That's wilderness for a reason, because there's no roads there, and that's because it's too steep to put roads in there. So one is the steepness is a concern. It also has some bug kill issues and forest health issues that are of concern. The other thing is, if we get a firefighter in here and he gets injured, we look at modeling and how long is it going to take us to get that firefighter out there? And there's places in there that it shows that it's going to be more than 6 hours. If we get a firefighter injured, the desire is that they're to somewhere where we can get definitive care, a hospital, that within 1 hour of the injury. So we are not going to meet that. So the forest has said, let fire do its natural thing in the Greenhorn Wilderness, and we're good with getting off. So that's kind of our second strategy. With that, we know that there's some homes nearby, and I know there was some material out front as far as doing the home ignition zone and clearing everything combustible within 5 feet of your house, another 5 to 30 feet, kind of thinning out the vegetation, having, it's better to have green lawns and that sort of thing, irrigate that area, and then 30 to 100 feet out, thin out, a little less, but, consider those things. And even something as simple as, not having a wood pile on your deck, removing that. So I've seen a lot of homes where the fires kind of come through, but they had a pile of wood on their deck, and 3 hours later, that pile of wood is starting on fire, and we lost that home. And we, even with the amount of resources we have here, we don't have enough resources to put an engine at every house. So, if you do live in that wilderness or the wild and urban interface, I feel you have a shared responsibility. I live in that sort of situation. I've done things as putting rock, gravel around the house and things like that, taking my firewood in during the summertime so it's not right next to the house and that sort of thing. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, what we're looking at, what we've kind of been doing, what we're looking at big picture. This fire, unless we get a really good monsoonal moisture, and I think there's a number of examples of fire along the Colorado Front Range where they've gotten a pulse of moisture, everybody thinks it's done, it's like the Hollywood movies, everybody dances around fire camp and are happy. That's not the case. We know that it's long haul. We've even seen fires where they've gotten a foot of snow, and then you get the Chinook winds. And that's one of our big concerns as far as the wind flow in here and going down the road. So we're trying to set things up for, our tenure is coming to an end the beginning of next week, so we're trying to set things up. And when that happens, our transition, we're here for a day with the new team coming in, so we kind of give them the intel we have, and then they can take over after they have a day with us, and then we're available after that if they have questions. But that's kind of in a nutshell what we've been doing as far as the operation goes, and thanks for having us.
Good evening. My name is Bill Ritter. I'm the fire chief for the Florence Fire Protection District here in Florence and out south to the Custer County line. Little bit of events that we had. I got a call from the Wetmore fire chief and was advised that Wetmore was on evacuation notice. And I know that the Wetmore community has people in Fremont County who are right across the street. So I made the call to go ahead and move an area that's 4.5 miles from the county line south along Highway 67 and 2.5 miles to the west, 2 miles to the east, where all of the houses are. We captured all those in immediate danger and put them on pre-evacuation alert. Then on the 3rd, I was told that fire's coming into Wetmore. It's going to come into Fremont County, and we don't have any resources to give you. This was, I think, the day the IMT team showed up, and they hadn't taken over yet. So I said, well, I better get to Wetmore and see what's going on, and I need to do a pre-evacuation for all of the area where the fire is blowing. When I got up there, the windsock at the fire station was standing straight out, ash was landing on my truck, and I made the call that most likely the fire was going to burn down the north face of the mountains there. And with all of the hills, or the homes in the hills, I decided to go ahead and do a pre-evacuation order that I did, which was a really big area. And I've caught in a lot of crap about that, but my first priority was the safety of all the people. We can get them out of there. If the fire burns fast through there, we'll go in and take care of the fire the best we can. Afterwards, if the fire's creeping, we'll attack it and slow it down. I had engines from Florence and Rockville staging in the area, and when I got a hold of the chief in Wetmore, I was able to talk with him. We discussed where the fire was at, and we moved all of the trucks up into the Wetmore area to try to keep it from coming into Fremont County, and even down into the houses there. On that first day we were there, we had 17 firefighters, 6 apparatus, and a command vehicle in there to help Wetmore out. And we kept things safe for the night. And then the next morning, we were there till like 2 or 3 in the morning. The next morning, we came out with 15 firefighters and 6 apparatus, a command vehicle, and an ambulance. And we assisted Wetmore even more. And we started getting resources in to help us. And we just continued working with them and protecting it and protecting our community. We did have no injuries. We've made a lot of good progress. I continued up there with Wetmore to keep an eye on it, so I knew what was happening so I could alert everybody in Fremont County if things changed. And I finally got to go home. I got home, and then I got a phone call from the team that we need to evacuate. And so I called everybody and told them to start evacuating. And there was questions why Williamsburg didn't have a pre-evacuation notice. That's because the team had decided Williamsburg needed to be evacuated as well. So it took a little time to get that built in the computer so they could send those alerts out. It's not something that's just there. They have to draw an area, and then they have to put it into the computer, and the computer decides who to call. After that, we continued monitoring. I've been up there every day, at least twice a day, talking with the crews during their shift changes to see how things are going. And also, Sheriff Cooper and I've been going to Pueblo, sitting in on the meetings, talking with the crews, the liaison people at the team, and the command staff, the operations staff, and getting a good grasp of what's going on, what their plans are. I can tell you they know way more about this than I do. They have more people in there with better tools than we have, but we've got it taken care of, and fortunately it didn't come into Fremont County, and as far as I know, it hasn't damaged any homes in the Wetmore area. But that's up for those guys to say. I've just been at the command center since they took over. And I'll be outside afterwards if you have any questions of me.
I got a question right now. Did Fremont County do anything to cut any fire lines on Fremont land?
All of the efforts to put fire lines in have been on the Wetmore side, the Custer County side. I know there were numerous people out in the Fremont County side with their own equipment cutting fire lines out there on the properties.
Why doesn't they use their equipment to help cut a fire line between the fire and us, is what I'm asking.
We'll discuss this afterwards. We'll take time and answer your questions, okay?
Okay, that's fine.
We will. Thank you.
My name is Alan Cooper, and I'm the sheriff of Fremont County. When this fire first started off, my initial thought was it was going to be like a lot of the little spot fires that I've seen. Is it'll burn for 1-2 days, it'll be attacked. Colorado is much better now at using air assets on these smaller fires, and that would be the end of it. And forgive me if I get my dates wrong, they're all blurring together now. but it was, I think, 2 or 3 days into the fire when it literally exploded. And I knew from talking with Sheriff Smith how nasty that country is that fire was going through. And then it burned into Pueblo County. And from talking to Sheriff Lucero, I know how nasty that country was. And so I went to Chief Ritter, and I said, you know, we need to take a look at this, and why don't we just go to Pueblo and talk to the Type 1 folks and see what's going on. So we made a trip to Pueblo, and I learned that a couple of things had happened. We had the liaison team come down to the Fremont EEOC because they were concerned about this fire behavior, that it was pushing north and it was making big runs. And so in the EOC, they took our maps that GIS had put together, and they formed polygons that they named F for Fremont, and I think it was 1 through 4 originally. I think it was 1 through 4. And that's what they were going to base their evac plan on. I also learned that in Alaska, sheriffs are not the fire warden. They have a totally separate person that handles fire in that state. And so when we went up there, they wondered why I was there. So we explained that difference. And those folks were very helpful. And then using the knowledge that both Bill and I had, we tried to, and we were successful, modify some of those polygons for evac routes. We knew the terrain, we knew the people, we knew the roads. And so we started working back and forth and refining this. Now, one of the things that happened is when the fire made its big push north, that is when they got the evac notice, okay? That came out and went, I think it went to dispatch, correct? And dispatch had no information except evac now. So the conversation we had with liaison, it's like, hey, this is my county. I want to put those notices out, and if they're going to go out, I want to put the wording out so that people know what to do. So we made that change. We refined some of the polygons down and separated out the coal camps who were on evac, because we could see, based on fire behavior and what they were doing on the ground, that the likelihood of the fire getting that far north was slim. Not impossible, but slim. But we did feel that the southern half of the county was still in danger, and so we kept that on evac. So based on what happened in the last 48 hours, I think at 1 o'clock today is when I put the entire county on pre-evac. So people can move back and forth freely. But one of the things that I learned from the information that went out to the coal camps is even though they were on pre-evac, people were not ready to evac. Okay, that's the purpose of pre-evac, is to get ready, get your stuff ready, get your papers, figure out what you're going to do with your animals. And the biggest problem that we had was with the animals. Where are you going to put them? Okay, so you folks in that area, think about that stuff. So now, we're going to go back up tomorrow. We're going to do some more assessment on what I need to do as far as what are we going to do on these evac areas, and should we be looking at refining down those shaped files for future use. Because I did take an advantage this time, and I got all the fire chiefs together, and we went through and put polygons through the entire Fremont County. County GIS has uploaded all of that information into the GIS computer, and they can now plot out maps like this for any spot in Fremont County. So that was a good thing. That is something that we probably should have done 20 years ago, and I took this opportunity to get with those fire guys and make that happen. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Joe Lobiondo. I'm the local battalion chief for the Colorado Division of Fire Prevention and Control. And I live here in Fremont County. I live on the east side of Penrose. And so already this year, there have been a couple of incidents that some of you are already aware of, the 24 fire on Fort Carson and the KO fire as well. I live a few miles from there. I fortunately wasn't evac from the location, but had fire really close to our property. So feeling some similar things to probably what a lot of you were feeling earlier in the week. We're certainly, Sheriff had mentioned it, the sheriff is the fire warden of the county in Colorado. And statute says that if a fire exceeds the capability of the county sheriff, they can request assistance from the state of Colorado. I generally will get involved at that point, and our job is to provide the resources to the county to take care of the fire as quickly as we can. Even though Fremont wasn't part of that, that action took place in both Custer and Pueblo counties very early on Monday morning when this started. 9:30 that morning, we had ordered a Type 3 incident management team that could take the fire until the Type 1 team or the complex incident management team could come in. They were ordered at the same time. So those actions took place very early in both Pueblo and Custer counties. As the fire began to grow, we brought Fremont County into that process as well as Huerfano. On the south end, there were some evacuations out of Huerfano County. So the state gets involved in that fashion on large incidents like this to bring the support that we need. And there's over 1,800 folks that are supporting this incident from what I understand is 29 states. So coming from all over the place to support this incident and try to help us get around it as quickly as we can. We do know it's going to be on the landscape for quite a while. The transition of the next team will be on Wednesday next week. They'll take it over and move us forward. And our job and you know, my agency administrator partners with the Forest Service and the BLM will do the best we can to set that team up with all that they need to take the work that's already been done and move it forward. So thanks for being here tonight, and I'll be around for questions. Thanks.
Good evening. My name is Destiny Chapman. I'm the district ranger for the San Carlos Ranger District here. My office is in Canyon City. So not only do I have professional connection to this fire, the bulk of my district does include the Wet Mountains, but also have some personal connection. I actually consider Wetmore my home. That's where I grew up. That's where my parents still live. They are evacuated now, as are my aunt and uncle. So they're staying with me in Williamsburg. So we were evacuated for a short period of time when that order came out. So there's been a lot going on with that. I actually graduated from Florence High School. I'm old enough that I didn't graduate out of this school, but the old school downtown. So this area is home to me. And this fire is certainly, like I said, professional as a challenge, but a very personal connection as well. And I do really appreciate all the community support. You guys have been wonderful. Really appreciate our local departments that came out and helped protect, and the team that is here. Everybody has done a fantastic job. It's tremendous the amount of work that has gone in out there on the fire line. Just really thank everybody for that, and would ask for your continued support. As you've heard, we're going to have fire on the landscape for quite a long time. So we're going to be dealing with this for a while, and I would just ask you to continue to support us in our efforts as we work through that. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jim Pitts. My day job, I'm the Deputy Forest Supervisor here on the Pike San Isabel. On this incident, I'm working closely with Joe and our BLM partners in regards to, as an agency kind of representative, if you will, with the Alaskan team. In that role, we're embedded with their operations on a daily basis, working with them to highlight the different issues around the fire, priorities, what's going on with, the local resources and that local cooperative effort, because it takes a team, right? It takes an entire team to take on a challenge like what this fire is. So between the state, between the counties, between the federal resources, no one agency could attack a fire like this and be successful. The only way we can do this is by working together. And one of those key items about what our priorities are is, so my grandmother had a little sign outside of her door, and it said, "A house is made of brick and stone, but a home is made of love alone." And just know that your homes are our number one priority. Homes make communities, right? It's the local businesses that make those communities thrive. And that has been our number one priority since the very beginning of this incident. The firefighters that initially responded to this incident were facing challenging conditions. Yeah, IMAT shared that information with you all. Like, this is a different time. This is a different fire. The fire behavior analyst went through what he's seen, and he's a professional at this. He's really good at what are the effects of the drying conditions and what kind of fire behavior we're going to see. You saw the graphs. We haven't seen this kind of fire like this before. So these firefighters that are out there, they're fighting the good fight. They're taking on the challenge. But every one of them know that your homes are your American dream. And those dreams are precious. And we're doing everything that we can to protect those values. And yes, we talk about it in maybe different language than you all, but we are your neighbors, as Destiny highlighted. We live in your same communities, but there's friends and family from 29 states that have come to help. And this is what America is about. How we rally around catastrophes and support each other is a strong value and it's basically a foundation of America. So thank you for all of the support from the community. We thank the firefighters. We thank the team that came in to help us. But we all know that the pressure is on you as the community, especially the evacuees. And we're going to do our best to get you back to where you can go home. But we got to make sure it's safe. And it's going to take time to do that. But as our objectives are being met, primarily kind of on the east side and then back up to the north, that frees up some resources so that we can focus back on the forest. And we'll take and try to make that box as small as we can, as what the operations guys explained. But this fire is going to take some more time. And like I say, it's going to be on the landscape for a little while. That means as a community, we're going to be working hard together. We'll keep you all informed. We will transition, to another management team, but the local folks, we're all still here. And the next challenge that we're going to have, because eventually it will rain, and eventually the forecast will come through. But after fire comes floods. And we're going to be working with another set of partners. These very same partners, but additional partners will come in to try to help and find some assistance for you too, and we'll be sharing some of that information as time progresses. But thank you all for coming tonight, and we'll be out for questions. And now I'm going to introduce Mr. Jake Livingston. He's the IC for the Alaska team.
All right, good evening, everybody. My name is Jake Livingston, IC for Alaska Team 1. A little bit about myself. So I live in Fairbanks, Alaska with my family. Lived there for about 25 years. The Alaska team, there are a lot of Alaskans on that team, but we also draw people in from all over the United States, really, just to help support us. And, they work with us from year to year. When Alaska, we have our peak fire season is right around solstice, so it starts out in the middle of June, lasts like 1 to 2 months. But, after our rains come into play, then we go available for assignments in the lower 48. So we've been in many states in the Intermountain West, and we're glad to be here to help. We took over operational control of this fire on July 1st. As many others have mentioned, the conditions were pretty extreme. High winds, super dry. The terrain is unforgiving, especially as you move toward the west. The fire size was very challenging, and the rapid rate of spread. Right, you got to keep up with it, and just when we took it over, it was around 40,000 acres, so it's a big footprint. When we took over, we'd already ordered a bunch of resources to assist with controlling this fire. That would everything from hand crews to engines to dozers, helicopters. So that's all operational stuff. But what goes along with all those firefighters is just the support side of it, right? So that's why we're at 1,800 people estimated right now. So we have to provide for space for those support functions to operate. We have to provide food and water, and then camping space, that sort of thing. So it's a real big organization, and really a lot of people to manage. Our priorities have always been life and property, residences, and that's always our priority. We were happy to see the rain. That really allowed us time to get just a short breath, kind of get on a level playing field before it dries out. We were able to get a foothold in some of those areas on the east side, so we could start coming around each side, protecting those communities, Rye, Colorado City, and then all the way around up to the top. And then, of course, on the interior of the fire, Beulah, all the stuff that's going on in there as far as like crews and engines just patrolling around, mopping up residual heat sources. And all that stuff is ongoing. Really what's important for us, number one, just getting around this fire, protecting residences, but this next team coming in, they'll be taking over around the 15th, as mentioned. But we really have to set them up for success. We have to make sure things are in place just to keep up the momentum and just make sure all the information is passed on, right? And there is a lot of information from the support side and then all those operators out in the field, who's out there, what they're doing, and where they're at. I think I just want to give a shout out to the local fire departments and the sheriff's department for all the work they did before we even got here, and then just working with them throughout this incident. It's really integration, right? We want to help out. We want to help them, and they're really helping us because they have all that local knowledge, and they're just letting us know how the local processes are, and ideas for just operational tactics, that sort of thing. And then just really hearing stories of local departments doing their best to save houses, and I know some of their homes were severely damaged. So anyway, it's impressive. And then just we recognize as a team the impacts to the local communities, the trauma and the stress. There's a lot of firefighters out there, aside from the day job, that have been directly or indirectly impacted by fires like this all over the western U.S. So we recognize the stress that this fire's caused. I think I just want to end with that, and I think it'd be better just to spend some time answering people's questions outside of this room. So anyway, I appreciate your time. Thanks for listening.
I want to thank all of our speakers. I think we learned a lot tonight, heard some really good stories about what went on in this county. And I know that a lot of people want to help the firefighters and the incident management teams that come here to help, but it's really your neighbors, your friends, your family that needs the help here. So think about the people that are evacuated. Think about those folks who've ultimately have lost their home. Those are the people who really need the help, really need the donations, and really need the support. There's a lot of small fire departments around all of the counties throughout this area of Colorado. They need the help. They need the support, because those are the people that are going to be first on scene every time, and they need your support so that they can continue to do that. A lot of them are volunteer departments. They're working on a shoestring budget. So those are the people where you need to direct your energies, your donations and such, because they're your friends and neighbors that's going to support you when you need it. I want to thank the school for letting us use their school. As they say, this is it's going to be a long event. It's going to be ongoing here for several more weeks. I don't want to use the M word, but it's big fire out there and it's still holding a lot of heat. We're going to get containment around this fire, but yet it's going to take a pretty good rain, and heaven forbid if it makes it into snowfall before it really snuffs this fire. So we're in for the long haul. Think of yourselves, think of your friends, think of your neighbors. The online folks will continue to answer questions that you're putting into the chat. These will be available recorded so you can continue to post your questions. You'll also be able to go and re-watch this so you can get a little more information. At the end of this, the slides that have been played, they'll go through on a slow roll, so you'll be able to have a chance to see what the information that was on the slides and the pictures that were presented here tonight. So I just want to say thank you. I want to say thank you to the folks that tuned in, and we will be having another community meeting. It will be Sunday in West Cliff. The sheriff out there would like to host a community meeting for his area. He's invited the fire team to come and make presentations. It also will be presented online, both YouTube and the incident's Facebook pages. And till then, we'll see you there on Sunday. Thank you very much.